Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Purple Insider. Matthew Coller here, and it is time for a Monday morning Murph. As even before we're recording here, we just cannot stop talking about Sam Darnold's performance, specifically for me, the 52-yard touchdown to Justin Jefferson. But it's one of those, Murph, where you could just pick your favorite touchdown of his day and break it down. Is this the best performance that you have seen in your years covering Minnesota Vikings football in person? You were in the stadium yesterday, because for me, it is the best quarterback game that I have seen by a Vikings quarterback in person, probably by any quarterback, even quarterbacks against the Minnesota Vikings inside US Bank Stadium. Sam Darnold, 5 touchdowns, and even Kevin O'Connell was complaining that it was not a perfect quarterback rating, but it was darn close.
Yeah, I would say in person, either as a fan or as in a press box, that was probably the most complete statement game I've ever seen. And because I say statement game because of all the obvious storylines and circumstances surrounding it. You've got his predecessor coming back for an emotional game, probably more so for him than anyone else, Kirk Cousins with Atlanta. And then you also had the scenario where it wasn't as you mentioned, I mean, Atlanta was coming after Cousins. They had found some ways to really turn the interior Vikings offensive line into a turnstile, which isn't the first time this season, but it seemed pretty dramatic that they were having protection issues up the middle. And as you mentioned, the 52-yard bomb to Jefferson was impressive because not only did he escape sort of a free blitzer, a free safety that was coming in on him and step out of that trash in the pocket, but to roll to his right and still have the wherewithal to keep his eyes downfield. He probably could have run for that first down or at least come close to the sticks. And we've seen him do that in the past. Doesn't hurt to have Justin Jefferson with a 50-yard radius around him and not a defender in sight. I don't know how that happens. I think Mike Hughes fell down coming back to try to find him, but pretty bad idea to leave the greatest wide receiver in modern history without anybody around him within 10 yards of the end zone. But, it's also easy to see that and either not get your feet straight, not you get your eyes set downfield and airmail it or underthrow it and actually bring the defense back into it. I mean, he threw that thing 50-some yards. It had to be right on to Jefferson so he could just walk into the end zone. But when you look at the totality of what he's done in the last 4 weeks, since really flaming out in Jacksonville and raising alarms about whether midnight had struck and, the pumpkin was going to return, I feel like he's played the best quarterbacking. You could argue maybe some of the best quarterbacking in the NFL over the last 4 weeks. And 11 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, the production he had yesterday, and to just watch him enjoy that on the sideline during a television timeout as the Vikings were kind of, putting the final touches on a 21-point victory. And then you wrote about this today too, is just you could sense that there's some pent-up emotion there. This has been a long 9-month journey for him since he arrived in Minnesota. I don't think anybody on the planet would have seen him on December 8th towel waving on the bench to a frenzied crowd after the greatest performance of his life, and also delivering the statement that, it was right to move on. It was right to use me as a bridge. Maybe we'll see J.J. McCarthy next year. Maybe we won't. But at the moment, the Vikings have one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, and there's no sign that he's going to be regressing anytime soon.
Yeah, so a few things there. Kevin O'Connell told Sam Darnold when he walked off the field, you know how many quarterbacks in the league are able to make that throw? There's so many things about that specific play.
What number do you think he used, by the way? He was coy. Do you think there's only one? Did you think he made Darnold the guy, or do you think he put an asterisk by that? He wouldn't reveal that.
I mean, truly, though, even like he's not being rational in that moment. So maybe he just says, do you know how many quarterbacks can make that play? Like rhetorically, meaning not very many. But if we're trying to figure it out, how many could we come up with? Probably 4, maybe. Matthew Stafford, Justin Herbert, Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes. I'm not sure there's too
Joe
many
Burrow
beyond that.
on a
Maybe
good day.
Burrow. Yeah, maybe Burrow. Is Burrow. Yeah, he's a playmaker for sure. So the thing that impresses me, well, does Burrow escape the safety though? That's a question. I mean, I guess probably. So yeah, we're talking about 5 quarterbacks. He escapes a free running safety, a guy who probably runs a 4.5 or 4.6 coming right at him. And Kevin Seifert tweeted out the screen grab of 3 Atlanta Falcons players chasing after Sam Darnold in the backfield. He goes to his left, swings around in front of them, which is already kind of a crazy idea to begin with. And then every single player in the league probably runs for the first down there. And that's where only Allen, only Mahomes, I'm not even sure if Herbert thinks to do it, only Burrow thinks to do it. He's running full speed away from these guys and then just looks down and realizes, oh, yeah, I could just throw that ball 50 yards. I mean, when you're running full speed to the right sideline and then you look downfield and see Justin Jefferson with his arm up and go, oh, okay, I can just throw that ball that far while running that way. I don't think the TV truly did it justice how fast he was going and the angle in which he had to turn his body and throw it. But this guy, the other touchdown to Addison, there's a collapsing pocket. It looks like someone hits his arm and the ball still gets there and he still makes a play. I mean, this is what I wrote about last week, Murph. The arm talent and the playmaking talent of Sam Darnold is just a straight up game changer. And when you can pair that with him playing true quarterback, go through progressions, sit in the pocket, sometimes manage the game, sometimes throw the football away, you have something truly special that's happening here.
Yeah, the velocity on the pass that he made to Addison, I think 90% of quarterbacks, when you have your right guard pushed into your body as you're releasing, is probably going to be a balloon ball. And it wasn't. It was as high and arcing and on target as you could expect, despite having a massive, probably 700 pounds of humanity in your face with an oncoming rusher and your guard. And then to have the wherewithal to decide to make that throw, and then to have the confidence that you're going to find a receiver downfield, who, by the way, Jordan Addison, I think, we may be in a position now where we're calling the receiving core 1A and 1B as far as Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison as their historic day, which we can get into a little bit later, really punctuated. I feel like there's a sense when you read players' comments after a game or even during a week too, you can tell how much Darnold has galvanized that locker room. And it isn't just because he's won 11 games, and it's not because he's just playing at the highest of high levels the last month. This began in the offseason. I mean, this began when he showed up. He showed up humble. He showed up ready to work. He showed up ready to kind of flush the past without dwelling on it, as he's been very publicly stoic about that. I mean, you want to talk about one game at a time discipline. That's what he's been since March, which is admirable because there probably have been times where he's ready to bust out in front of a microphone and say, you like that? How much do you like that? I just feel like he's, what he's gone through in the last 4 years or 5 years has really kind of positioned him for this kind of success, because you really can't appreciate what it takes to be an elite quarterback in the NFL until you do it. And when you're confronted with bad coaching, bad ownership decisions, a revolving door of offensive coordinators, when you're saddled with the New York Jets and the Carolina Panthers, the perpetual rebuilding clubs, it's easy to get disillusioned and start questioning your own talent. Nobody's ever questioned Sam Darnold's quarterback talent, his arm strength, his physique, his ability to flip the ball into tight windows or fire it into tight windows, to hit the sideline routes, the outs, the hard passes. He just hasn't been in a position to succeed, whether it's been poor offensive line, not a great receiving core, or chaos above him in coaching and management. So for him to have been able to settle down in this environment with a quarterback-friendly coach, a superstar receiver, quality offensive line, good leadership already in the room. Nobody expected Darnold to come in and be the alpha male, but he's earned that right now. And I think that the team recognizes that and is treating him as an alpha male quarterback, as every team should. But he had to earn that. And he's earned that over the course of 9 months. To see him on the bench, towel whipping the crowd as they showed his statistical mastery of the day, and watching his teammates react to that was almost as enjoyable as seeing him react to that. Still a long way to go. Still a lot of big time plays to be made and pressure games to be played where your opinion could change in a hurry. But I feel like I think yesterday's performance really established Sam Darnold as the Vikings' unquestioned leader on offense. I don't know how long that's going to last. It may be a matter of weeks. But right now, Sam Darnold is the alpha male in that room.
The towel wave at the end, my understanding is that they did not show it on TV. So I am very sorry to all of those who didn't get to see it.
It was during a TV timeout, I believe.
Yeah, I mean, that's one where it would have been, and maybe they didn't catch it with their cameras. That would have been nice for everybody to see. The Vikings did tweet it out, so you could check out their Twitter, but it didn't have the sound with it to hear the pop of. They talk about that in WWE when somebody comes out and the crowd goes absolutely insane. This was one of the biggest pops that I've ever heard in US Bank Stadium, because I don't think anyone expected him to do it. And just to describe the scene, as you said, they're showing his stats. They just show him over there on the sideline, and he's kind of just sitting there because, whatever, doesn't know he's going to be shown on the Jumbotron. And then he grabs a towel and jumps up and starts swinging it. And you could see he was kind of yelling like, "Let's go," or whatever, that kind of thing. And for Sam Darnold to be so kind of straight-faced all the time and not somebody who's trying to pump everybody up like that, to have that outburst, I think it showed what this has meant to him. You could kind of feel the whole journey, as Kevin O'Connell calls it, kind of hitting him at once. Like I'm doing this. Like, I can do this. When so many times before he was made fun of for saying he was seeing ghosts or failed with the Carolina Panthers and so forth. And environment absolutely matters, but he matters. Like, every quarterback who was a top 3 pick could have gotten cynical, miserable, entitled, frustrated, blamed other people. I thought it was so impressive when he came in and everybody's poking at him with, "Hey, tell us, blame the Jets, blame the Panthers, blame somebody else. Come on, here's the blame stick," and he's refused to ever do that. And Brian O'Neill said to me yesterday, because I was like, what is he like, in the huddle and everything else, and just as your leader. And he said that he takes the blame for things that aren't his fault. Like, that's behind the scenes. That's
leadership too.
Right. The way that he acts in those press conferences, he's not a quote machine, but I think that's him. I think that he just approaches it like one day at a time, like the cliches that are there. And that has really paid huge dividends. The other thing that KOC said after the game, which I thought was a really great story about both of them, was coming out of Jacksonville, that Darnold kind of went back to the drawing board to go back and look at what had worked for him, study the things that had gotten off in Jacksonville and why he had thrown those interceptions. And O'Connell said the reason he was so happy with that win is because he felt like it was a win in Jacksonville, but also an opportunity to really teach and coach and improve Sam Darnold. And since then, he has been the number 1 quarterback in the NFL since that happened. And I think that says a lot about both of them, because that was a moment in Jacksonville where the whole world said the wheels are coming off and Sam Darnold is going to go back to being a turnover machine. And since then, he has not even been anything close to that. And his reassessment and the coach's attitude toward it, those things coming together are the result of one of the best 4-game stretches you're ever going to see.
Well, and self-awareness is another great quality of a leader, and the ability to recognize your flaws and your commitment to correcting those. And you're right. It would have been convenient for him to chalk up Jacksonville as, I got to do better, but that we won and I'm not concerned about that. I mean, to take ownership of that and recognize there were things he wasn't seeing correctly. There were positions he was putting himself in to make poor throws, to make bad decisions. To actually recognize that and get back to work on that is probably something he's learned over the last 4 years. Whereas when you're a hot prospect coming out of a football factory like USC and you're a top and you're in New York, you're probably not reflecting and you're probably not honing your craft the way you should when everything's been handed to you. He knows how tenuous his career could be. He knows how tenuous being a starting quarterback is in the NFL. And to recognize that moment and not take it for granted and get back to work and trust yourself, your skill set, and trust your coach, who's your biggest advocate, but is also, a fellow quarterback. And we've talked a lot about KOC's abilities as a quarterback whisperer. Daniel Jones may learn this too. That helps to have an advocate in the room as opposed to just an old crusty defensive guy who couldn't be bothered with quarterbacks. I feel like, I'd love to, fill him up with Darnold with True Serum and really get an idea of what it was like last year to be on the sidelines in San Francisco and be so out of sight and so out of mind and literally just being a placeholder on a club. Zero expectations. If you're in the game, it's a disaster because Brock Purdy can't play. You're on a Super Bowl team that's doing everything right with a great coach, and you're just sort of an ornament off to the side. You're a piece of furniture. You're not necessarily relevant to that. And what must go through a person's mind when they have been really humbled and cut down to size by the industry they thought they were going to thrive in? I would be curious as to what that experience was like in San Francisco compared to as opposed to all the pain and misery of Carolina and New York. We know why it didn't work there, but his decision to kind of get a soft landing in San Francisco, surround himself with quality people, take the pressure off, and really absorb being a quarterback as opposed to trying to earn your stripes. I think that, and I don't know this for sure, but I have a feeling that experience last year in San Francisco might have been more beneficial than anything else he had experienced in the NFL in the past, even though he barely saw the field. If he did at all, maybe some garbage time. That is what I would be curious about, is what do you learn about yourself in those moments? You're staring out at that field, you're watching all of these players succeed, players that were undrafted or farther down the draft chain than you were, whether at your position or anywhere else. It's got to be an incredibly humbling experience, but also a motivating experience. And he just seems to have found the right spot. And the right spot opened up. How's this for a pivot? Because the Vikings made the right decision by moving on from Kirk Cousins, who made the right decision to grab as much long-term security and money as he could and had earned through 13 years in the NFL. But I don't think it could be ironic anymore that Sam Darnold had the best day of his career and literally solidified himself in the fan base and in the locker room on the day his predecessor returned emotionally for what was supposed to be his vengeance game. And to see the two paths that Darnold and Cousins seem to be taking in their individual careers, and the two paths that the Vikings and the Falcons have taken because of their choices and the ramifications of those decisions, how well it's worked out here and how tenuous it looks in Atlanta for Cousins.
I mean, Vikings fans couldn't have written it up any better than their quarterback, who was brought in as a journeyman for $10 million, outplaying the guy that they let go and that their front office decided not to pay. I think the mental reset for a quarterback is something that teams need to pay attention to in the future, because you look at the way Bryce Young came back from a benching, the way that Anthony Richardson came back from a benching. Both those guys played much better football after that. And with Sam Darnold, I think that that's what it was. And there's just so much piled on top of you as a top 3 draft pick who failed in New York. So you're going to get all of it there. And then with Carolina, he played really well at the end of the 2022 season, but I swear no one saw it because they fired their coach. They just didn't have any games that they were playing for the playoffs or anything else like that down the stretch, but he did play really, really well there. And I think that that's what caught Kyle Shanahan's eye. He got into a game, maybe it was against Baltimore with San Francisco, where Brock Purdy was struggling and it was kind of out of hand. And he played extremely well and showed that he was really prepared. So I think that he did take last year to focus on how can I use this experience to be better. And I had asked him that about San Francisco earlier this year before they played him. Like, how did that experience help you? And what he said was that he watched Brock Purdy. I mean, think about this. Like you said, like there's no arrogance in Sam Darnold. And that is maybe the number one reason that he has been able to do this, because he is not an arrogant person. He doesn't think I know it all. I was a top 3 pick. Look how talented. He said last year he watched Brock Purdy, and what he took away was you don't always have to be the hero. Sometimes you can just run the offense. In fact, most times you could just run the offense. And if you know where to throw the football and you just do the way it's drawn up, that a lot of times with coaches like this, it's going to work. Now, with Matt Rule, it probably wasn't going to work. So you could understand why he may not have trusted his coaches and was always trying to make crazy plays in New York and Carolina. But he realized that you can play point guard, and that's become another cliche. But for him, the cliches are all true and all effective. The other thing is too, Murph, Jordan Addison's emergence over these last couple weeks has been incredible. He's gone from a guy that we all knew was super talented from day one. I think his first preseason game, he made some insane catch. His first training camp, he was lighting people up. We're going, okay, I guess they drafted the right wide receiver. It's been a little rocky at times since then. There's been some up and downs with production. There's been some up and downs off of the field. And even throughout this season, wondering, all right, is he really going to get involved? Is he going to get on the same page? He had 2 ankle injuries that no doubt slowed him down from getting open early in the season. And then they probably win the Lions game if he ran the right route at the end. And it didn't seem like he was fully dialed in. So you're saying, which direction is this player going to go? And these last couple of weeks, maybe it's health, maybe it's confidence. I don't know what it is, but the light has come on with Jordan Addison. And now, I mean, it's not right to be comparing him to Chris Carter, but it's the same effect. It's the same effect when you have 2 guys that are this good at tracking the football. And how many times would Sam Darnold have been able to throw it up to a wide receiver and have him make these catches in the past in Carolina or in New York? Not very often, but now your life is different when you have someone like Jordan Addison playing next to Justin Jefferson.
Right. I mean, to take the Carter analogy a little bit farther, I mean, when he was here with Moss, I mean, Carter was considered, and this may be a tough label, but a possession guy, the guy that would make the 3rd down catch, that would toe tap the sideline. If you needed 5 yards, he'd get you 6. That was the kind of receiver he was, whereas Moss was, de-pantsing defensive backs and stretching the field and shaving the top off the defense, all of those cliches that kind of came out when he exploded onto the scene. I think Addison is a little bit more like Jefferson in the sense that he can outrace defenders down the field. He can out defend or box out and out battle a defensive back and put himself in a position to make great catches, high, low, behind him, in the middle of the field, along the sidelines. And to have that kind of a dual threat where you're literally telling the defense, pick your poison, because the Falcons, it looked like, without breaking it all down, at least in the post-game chatter, they were a little looser on Jefferson. They did single him up, whereas opponents in the last month have not seemed to be willing to do that. It seems like every defense has said, look, we're not letting Jefferson beat us. Let him throw to Hawkinson. Let him find Addison if they can get a running game going, or if they can maybe have Aaron Jones. We're not letting Justin Jefferson beat us. And yesterday, the Falcons seemed to dial up a little bit more pressure and get a little more aggressive with their safeties and allow Jefferson to roam a little, which, man, when Darnold spotted him the first time, the dam broke. And then because it seemed like in the last few weeks, Jefferson would emerge in the fourth quarter for a big catch or draw a pass interference to sustain a Vikings drive, but it was Hawkinson and Addison that were getting the glory in the end zone, or Josh Oliver, or Johnny Munt, or Aaron Jones, or anybody but Jefferson. And now I don't know if the Falcons were broken on defense because of this, or they saw something else that maybe if we concentrate a little more on Addison, maybe if we take away Hawkinson underneath, because Hawkinson wasn't really a factor much at all until late, that did allow Jefferson to roam free. Now, not as free as the 52-yarder that was clearly broken, but it seemed like that now with Addison almost a 1A and 1B situation, it's whack-a-mole for defensive coordinators, and that's not successful. And Darnold seems to realize that. And if Darnold's able to evade pressure and step out of pressure and show some nimbleness in the pocket, that not only can he pick up 5 yards to salvage a broken play or get to the first down stick on 3rd and 8, whereas Cousins would either check it down or run right into pressure, the versatility and the options to go off script to make plays downfield, when you have two wide receivers that are as elusive as Addison and Jefferson are, the whole playbook and the whole opportunity to really dominate an opponent opens up. And I really felt like that was the first time we saw the Vikings utterly dominate and pummel a team over 4 quarters with their offense. Early in the year when they were 5-0, we remember those first quarter stats. I think they were 37-0 over a period of time, or something that absurd, where they were just pummeling opponents. But then slipping in the second half, where, a lot of 3-and-outs, maybe an untimely turnover, and suddenly your defense is under stress again. The defense was under stress a bit early in the game yesterday. The time of possession was, I think, a 2-1 margin at one point. But once the offense really, really came to life, that's the first time I've seen the offense really dominate a game for 4 quarters. Whereas throughout the season, it seemed like the defense would be on for 2 or 3 quarters, particularly at the end when they needed them most, or the offense was just, taking the opening possession and scoring 7 points, and you're getting 14-21 in the first and second quarter and then hanging on. This was the first time the offense really took over the game and ended it. And that's a good harbinger. It also shows, I think, where Darnold's play has been elevated so much that everybody's kind of following with him. And I think O'Connell is recognizing that. He's spreading the ball around. It was really fun to watch them just take over a game at home offensively and turn the fourth quarter really into a party at US Bank Stadium. We haven't seen much of that because it's usually been a nail biter. And it really helps the defense catch its breath and stay sharp as we get going down the stretch here too.
The drive, gosh, there were 5 touchdowns, so I'm trying to think of which one it is. I think it was going into the fourth quarter. They needed, the defense had gotten gassed, and it was clear. And
was that the 98-yarder?
It wasn't that one. They scored a lot of points. It was.
If that's not your most dominant drive, I mean, what a day you must have had.
Right. No, I didn't want to bring up that drive because it's a little bit of a message to Kevin O'Connell. It was the first time I've ever seen Kevin O'Connell just keep running. That was the first Kevin Stefanski, Gary Kubiak-ish drive that I've ever seen from O'Connell, where he just went, you know what? We can run the football here. Run, safe play action pass, which I was for. I mean, those are ones where you can always throw the ball away. And then handoff. That was so impressive. And it's something that I have brought up many times, hey, you could just keep running when the other team isn't stopping it. And they weren't at the end of that game, but it was actually after. So I should have had the box score in front of me, but when Atlanta scored really fast, they had that response drive. They got the 2-point conversion to
tied it up 21 all.
Yeah. 21-21. Then the Vikings after that so desperately needed a long drive to keep their defense off the field, and they were able to come up with it. And that was the type of, when you're talking about complete offensive performance, they did it in a lot of different ways. It was, here's a 50-yard touchdown, but that wasn't the only one. They did have longer drives. They did have possession drives in the second half. They did have a 98-yard drive where a lot of it was handing the football off and then one dump check down to the backup tight end, which, I kind of was thinking about David Morgan from 2017, how he's a blocking tight end that they used to roll out every once in a while for a key first down or something. And this does have a Thielen and Diggs type of feel with TJ Hawkinson, I think, has a little more stretch the field than Kyle Rudolph, but still is always there for you underneath when you want him. And we're seeing a quarterback that everybody counted out utilize everything that he has here. And then the running game coming to life, and Aaron Jones getting some confidence, getting a touchdown, getting over those fumbles from the past. I mean, this is what.
And Cam Akers getting some real clock killing action.
Yes. Yeah. And this is what it feels like to have a complete team. Now, we have to talk about the defensive side. They gave up a lot of yards. They had to rely on catching the football when Kirk Cousins threw it to them. But the amount that they've been on the field is a worry for me. They need a week where they're out there for 40 plays or something, or 50 plays, not always on the wrong side of time of possession. Teams can run a little on them now recently. And what teams are really doing is completing these short passes to just have long drives. And I guess if you're Brian Flores, maybe you're conflicted because you're like, okay, that's great because you're not getting any explosives. But it's not great because Sam Darnold and Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison are sitting over on the sideline because they're completing short pass after short pass. Ivan Pace Jr. being out has turned out to be a huge issue for them, I think, because there's no real replacement. But I think this is going to have to be a situation where they lean heavily on Sam Darnold going down the stretch because they're going to play good quarterbacks and good offenses here in these last few weeks. It's going to have to be this way because it's not an easy answer to solve a defense that is worn down like this one is.
Yeah, I mean, anybody that's been listening to us talk every Monday, I mean, I've been pounding that drum since, September or October. The amount of snaps the defense has to play, the high leverage stress snaps in the third and fourth quarters when they were just hanging on or trying to keep the game in hand. That took a lot of miles and a lot of starch out of them. And again, it's a veteran unit, so you got to wonder how many weeks that can add up. And I do remember glancing, I think it was must have been in the second quarter, of just glancing up at the scoreboard during a timeout. And I think it was 16 and a half minutes for Atlanta and maybe 6 for the Vikings. And I thought, this is a terrible pace that they're on right now. And Cousins was picking up third downs. They were extending drives, short passes, a lot of soft spots that looked like in the secondary. As you said, they weren't necessarily always leading to 7 or even 3 points, but they were keeping the defense on the field and they were keeping Sam Darnold and company on ice. And I think what we saw yesterday now is almost if you can have an opportunity the way the Vikings did and Darnold did yesterday to kind of pick and choose where to put the ball and how to surgically march a team when you need it. If they can sustain a couple more of those drives in the first half that maybe don't lead to points, or maybe they do lead to, Will Reichert hitting the upright and no big deal. But to keep your defense fresh with a dominant offense now and a run game, and maybe O'Connell's willingness to exploit that run game, keep some of the tricks in the bag, especially in the red zone. It's a conversation for another day, but I just feel like that the offense can help the defense and complement so much more. And I think you're going to need defensive stops in the fourth quarter of a playoff game. And those sustained drives that you had in the first and second quarter that may not bear fruit could benefit that defense when you need a stop with 2.5 minutes left and your opponent crashing the red zone. So, yeah, that's something to keep in mind. But I think the offense could be the best help for the defense. And the way that they played yesterday, so well-rounded and so complete, there could be a blueprint there for evening that stress level. And maybe, I can't imagine the defense will have a 21-point lead in the fourth quarter anytime soon. But to be able to have that reserve in the tank is going to be so much more beneficial as we head into January.
Last thing, the crowd yesterday, phenomenal in US Bank Stadium. I thought they turned it all the way up to kind of playoff level. Do you think Vikings fans now, after this, is this a turning point for them buying into this team?
I'd love to declare that, but that it's a skeptical, scarred, bitter tribal fan base. So I'm sure there's a lot of nitpicking about the defense and the soft spots there. But I feel, I mean, this was only the second home game I was at. I was at the Detroit game, which was highly entertaining as well. I think there is a sense. I think we're going to remember the towel waving. I mean, if this Viking team does something special and ends up in New Orleans on February 9th and, brings a Lombardi trophy back here, there will be many, 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 many books written about the 2024 season. And I guarantee you they will all reference the fourth quarter, December 8th against Atlanta, with Cousins basically killing the clock and trying to get out unharmed in garbage time, and Sam Darnold waving that towel and being accepted and embraced by the Minnesota fans. If not a turning point, a seminal moment. That's where this team kind of arrived. I think that's what you'll see.
I agree. That was a very, very memorable game yesterday. Great to have you there in the press box, Murph. Great to have you every single Monday. People could go read your article over at purpleinsider.com as well. Thank you, sir. And we will talk.
We didn't even talk about Cousins. Go read my column. I kind of chronicled his sad return.
Oh, the Falcons quarterback?
Yeah, I know he's dead to you, but he was relevant yesterday.
Not worried about that.
All right. Have a good week,
Unless they play him in the playoffs, then we'll talk about it again. All right. We'll see you, Murph.
All right. Take care.
Football.